So I decided the other day, kind of on a whim, that I was going to do a reading vlog / read along for The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And so that is what I've done. The clips that you are going to see are going to be chronicling my 4-day read of this book, and I really enjoyed it, but I wanted to pop on before you watch the video and let you know that the audio quality is not the best. This is my first time attempting vlogging, and I still have some kinks to work out, so I still kind of got to figure out exactly what I'm doing with vlogging. Additionally, I filmed a lot of these vlogs late at night, which is when I do a lot of my reading. However, my husband was sleeping, and so I think subconsciously I was trying to be a little quieter so I wouldn't wake him up. So I am going to add closed captions to the video through YouTube. If you're having a hard time understanding what I'm saying, just turn on the closed captions and you'll be able to kind of follow along. So if you have any other suggestions for me, just let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you've read The Way of Kings, let me know your thoughts down below because I'd love to chat more about it. So without further ado, here's my reading vlog. Okay, so it is very late or very early, depending on how you want to look at it. But I realized that I kind of want to do a reading vlog, read along, thoughts review, wrap up thing for The Way of Kings. I just finished reading my first chunk of The Way of Kings. I am 32% through the book. I'm listening to it on audiobook, and I'm reading along on my Kindle with it. I put the audiobook on hold like 5 months ago at my library and have just kind of been waiting for it to come in. At that time, I didn't have a plan of when I wanted to read the Stormlight Archives. I just knew I wanted to read them this year. And then I decided to follow along with Elliot Brooks's read-along. And so technically in that read-along, the Stormlight Archives does not start until October. In October, November, December, you read those 3 books. And I had been checking on my hold to like make sure once I got towards the top I could suspend my hold. But clearly I wasn't checking on it often enough, and I got an email that my hold had come in. And I kind of debated on whether or not I wanted to read it or just return it back to the library and put my name back on the bottom of the list because it was another 6 months, but I knew I wasn't going to read it until October. But I decided since I had it, and I also had the physical form on my Kindle, that I was going to go for it. And then I was looking at how many days I had to read it, and the rereadathon starts on the 10th, and it is currently the 5th. I knew I wanted to be done with it by the time the rereadathon started, so that gave me 5 days, and I had to work 2 of those days. So I decided that I was going to give myself 3 days to read The Way of Kings. It's a little insane because it is a 1,000+ page book and a 45-hour audiobook. I'm a third of the way done. I have 2/3 to go and 2 more days. I'm enjoying it so far. You definitely just kind of get dumped in and you have no idea what's going on, no idea who anyone is, no idea how the magic system works. I feel like now in the book is kind of when I've started to kind of put things together. The format is interesting because for like one part we follow certain characters, and then we have like an interlude where you get like 3 short little snippets of other characters that I'm sure will come together in a beautiful way. And then you go to another part and then it is new people. Some of the people are the same, and then sometimes you get introduced to new people. I really like the narrators. The female narrator for this, I can't think of her name right now. I'll break down her name and talk about her in another clip. She's one of my favorite audiobook narrators, and unfortunately we don't get to hear that much of her. She only narrated part of part 1, and so far in part 2 she hasn't done any of part 2. And so I'm excited for her to come back. She also reads The Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan, and I love her in that audiobook. But I really like the characters. I really like the world. It's super interesting. And I really like the look at war that we get throughout this book. It's really interesting. I haven't really read a book that talks about war in the way that this book talks about war, and as like the kind of from the perspective of like the everyday soldier. Like we see, especially I think of Lord of the Rings for this, we see like the battles of the army, and it's just thousands upon thousands of people, and I'm like, wow, it would really suck to be those people out there out in front getting cut down. And this book is about those people and how much it sucks to be those people. hopefully I can finish it in 3 days. I'm probably gonna look and sound super raggedy in all of these videos if I do. So who knows if I'll even make this into a video. And also I wasn't planning on making this video until right now at like 5:30 in the morning. So I'm gonna go to bed. My work schedule actually is conducive to this. It's not all that weird for me to stay up all night and read all night, which is how I get so much reading done, because I can't do anything else around my house because my husband's sleeping because he works normal hours. I will say I've already noticed one tie-in from Elantris, which makes me wish that I had read the other books already, because I'm like, oh, maybe it's about more tie-ins and more mentions, but oh well, I guess I'll get them when I read those other books. I'll be like, hey, I recognize this from Stormlight. So I'll probably reread these books at some point, which is kind of sad, being like, I'm reading this 1,000-page book for the first time that I'm probably going to read again. But it's because it's a 10-book series that only the first 3 books are released. So, you know, by the time the next one comes out, who knows what I'll remember. I think Brandon Sanderson's pretty good at wrapping up his previous books in his next books. I think that's all I got. Sorry if none of this made sense and I sound really delirious. I'll talk to you guys again when I've read more. So it is day 2 of my Way of Kings read through. I started listening to parts of it, but I'm really, really tired today and I keep falling asleep. So I think I'm going to go make myself some coffee. Since I actually know that I'm going to kind of be vlogging my read through, I'm a little more prepared today. I'm about 35% of the way through the book. I actually read a little bit more like about this book, and Brandon Sanderson kind of talked about how all the Stormlight Archives are actually like a trilogy, and then with like short story novellas in between them, which are the interludes, which I found really interesting. So it's like 3 books put together. So that makes me feel like much more accomplished. My cat just abandoned me. She was snuggling with me as I read, but not anymore. But yeah, I'm going to try and do a little bit more reading today. I will keep you guys updated about what I am reading in The Way of Kings. So I've just hit the 50% mark in Way of Kings. I am really enjoying it so far. I am in the beginning of part 3. So with part 1 following Kaladin and Shallan, I really enjoyed the back and forth between the 2 narrators, and then we had the first set of interludes, and then we came to the next section, part 2, and that followed Kaladin, Dalinar, and Adolin, and so it was all the male narrator, so I kind of missed that switching back and forth. However, those 2 storylines are a little more closely related and happening in the same area, at least, so it's kind of interesting to see like one small little part of the war camp and then like the bigger functioning dynamics of the kingdom. I really like seeing how Kaladin has gone through kind of this emotional journey with being a slave and being like on the verge of committing suicide because he's sick of this life that he's living, to Syl, who is my favorite character. I absolutely love Syl. I love where she's going, and I'm so excited to see how this is connected to the bigger scheme of things, because there's no way she's just a spren that's like getting smarter. There's definitely more to this. And I was so glad that she convinced him and became his friend, and then he's been like motivating the men. So that's something that Brandon Sanderson is really good at, is writing about like how if you treat people with respect and with dignity, that they will take on a life of their own. And it's a theme he brings up in more than one book. In fact, it's been in every book that I've read by him, and I love that he sticks to that. I don't know, I respect that about his writing, and that he is pretty steadfast to that concept. I think that's a lesson we can all bear reminding of, especially today and how the world is. Anyway, so the second part follows that interlocking, and I really like that the Dalinar Adolin chapters like bounce back and forth between them seamlessly within the same chapter. Like their chapters are always just either the 2 of them, or it goes back and forth between the 2 of them, and I really like the father-son dynamic. That's one of the things that I've heard Brandon Sanderson talk about before I read the book, is that he really enjoys writing like the father-son dynamic, and you can tell that Adolin very much cares about his father, and that Dalinar very much cares about Adolin and about the other one. Shoot, I can't remember his name. It starts with an R. I have no idea how to feel about Sadeas currently. I want to be with Dalinar and, like, trust his visions. I definitely think Dalinar's visions are trying to tell him something. Like, I don't think he's just going mad and this is just, like, him getting old. I think he needs to trust in his vision. I'm curious to know if maybe him stepping down as a high prince will actually help him with this. Like, maybe he then can pursue these visions without so many restrictions and without having to, like, deal with the politics kind of around all of it. One of my other theories is that Kaladin defeated the Shard Bearer in battle. Like, we saw the beginning of the battle, but we never saw the end of it. But the Shard Blade is his. However, it didn't make him a Light Eyes or Amaran, I think is what it was. He wanted the shard plate and sword for himself, and so, like, he took it and ended up with Kaladin branded as a slave or something along those lines. I'm kind of interested to see, like, if they strung him up in a high storm, if he would survive, because I feel like it would just make him super powerful. But who knows? Maybe that'll happen. Maybe that'll be cool. Maybe that's totally not going to happen and no one can survive a high storm. I really like how we've just been kind of thrown into this novel with, like, little explanation of things, which I think is, like, a tenet of epic fantasy. It's just like, throw you in, don't explain the rules, and then leave little hints, and then you can be like, oh, this thing relates to that thing, and now that thing makes so much more sense that I read, which honestly, I already want to reread this story. Like, the little snippets at the beginning, I want to know what they're from, and then I want to go back and reread them all together. Because he provides so many little clues to things that I know are going to be important, but I have no idea when they're going to be revealed, and I'm so like, when are they going to come to fruition? I will say, the interludes, I totally thought I was going to hate them. When we first got to the first interlude, and it was just 3 random characters, I'm like, what? We're, like, in the middle of the story, and we're going to go, like, listen to a different story now? I was not excited for them. The interludes are my favorite part. Oh my goodness. The one about the man from the pier lake, I really liked him. I really liked the one about trading with the Shin. I'm super interested in the Shin and how they fit into all of this. And I really like Zeth. I know he gets, like, a whole book focused on him later, so I know we're going to find out more about him. His is, like, kind of tying the way through and kind of, like, pulling in a background plot. My favorite one was about Axies the Collector. Oh my gosh, I hope we get to see more of him in these books because he's hilarious, and his chapter was hilarious, and it was really short, and I love that he studies the Spren, and I want to learn more about them, because there's definitely something more about them, and especially with Spren, I feel like used to be something more, and then they were turned into Spren when the Radiance left, maybe? I'm just spouting theories now. 50% of the way through, which is page 565, chapter 34. It's getting really good. Kaladin's just about to get into trouble because he had the bridgemen turn their bridge sideways and save themselves, and it undermined the army. So that'll be interesting. I'm kind of hoping, like, him and Dalinar's paths cross a little more and they, like, start to interact with each other, because I feel like Kaladin and Dalinar are 2 people who could see eye to eye. Like, Kaladin could respect Dalinar. He hates all the Light Eyes, but I feel like they could just have so much respect for each other because they're both good people. That's what I like. They're both good people. Now in this third part, we're back to following Shallan and Kaladin. I kind of really want Shallan to just abandon her family and just study with Yasna and say, wow, it sucks to be you. Especially because her one brother is super creepy. Like, we got an interlude with him, and he, like, pulls the legs off of these little creatures and torments them, and seems to have this weird torture thing going on, and is kind of a dick. I feel like she should just fend for herself. Like, her family's not that good of people. One, I don't think she can do it. I don't think she can steal from Yasna. I don't think she's a good enough thief to do it. And I think Yasna will see right through it. I think she already sees through it. Like, she's mentioned things, and the way Yasna just knows what people are going to bring to her as arguments. Those are my rambling thoughts. Hopefully I can get to 66% before I get so tired I fall asleep. I did not mean to check in so soon, and you guys have no idea how soon I'm checking in. But literally, I got, like, 2 pages a page into this next chapter. And guess what they're doing? they're hanging Kaladin out in the high storm. So that thing that I just said I wanted to see, I'm gonna get to see it. And I'm so excited. I have a feeling epic things are coming. I love it when I make a book prediction and it comes true. I just love it. I was right. Kaladin totally survived the high storm, which, oh, that was such a good chapter. I loved it. I want to know what the repercussions are, though. But we have us immediately switched to Shallan, who also has just decided that she cannot steal from Yasna. I very much like where all of this is going. So, I'm excited to see what happens next with Kaladin. I maybe take back what I said about how I didn't want Shallan to steal from Yasna, even though I, kind of don't want her to. That chapter made me understand why she did. So, now I'm intrigued about that. But back to Kaladin. So, I have decided to stop for the night, but I am only about 60% of the way through. I'm on chapter 43 and on page 666. So, a little ominous, but I felt very validated when some of the predictions that I had came true. Kaladin, he is kind of starting to slip back into the depression that we saw him at previously. Hopefully he can kind of think of a way out of this, but Brandon Sanderson is doing a very good job of making things seem hopeless. I have no idea how he's gonna kind of get out of this situation. I'm also very conflicted with what's happening with Shallan. I kind of understand why she stole Yasna's Fabrial, but I'm kind of annoyed that she's planning on leaving again. But her parts have me so nervous. I keep thinking she's gonna get caught. I do think that Shallan killed her father. That's one of my wild theories that I'm gonna throw out there, because she drew that one scene of someone slumped over dead at a dinner table. She also hinted that this isn't even the worst thing she's done, and so I think the reason she's grappling with whether or not what Yasna did was right or wrong is because she doesn't know how to deal with what she's done. So I think we'll see more of that come to fruition soon-ish. I really have no idea what's going to happen next with Kaladin, or where this book is even headed. I had my predictions, but now I'm just I don't know. There's so many things building here. So I wasn't able to finish up the book last night, but hopefully tonight will be the night, because I don't have too much left and I don't have a ton going on tonight, so hopefully I can finish this one up. So last night I got 81% of the way through the book, and I am now on chapter 59. Kind of to recap what I read yesterday, I took some notes so that I would remember. We ended part 3, I believe, kind of with a bang with Shallan. She had stolen the soul caster from Yasna, but then she started seeing these creatures that also, side note, I'm pretty sure the king can see too. It was mentioned in a later chapter, some things that he thought he was seeing, and it's definitely the same thing she's seeing. So she's seeing these super creepy creatures, except she doesn't see them. She draws them in the background of what she's looking at currently. So that part really creeped me out. During that, when she was having an episode where she was seeing them, she ended up accidentally soul casting and then had to make it look like she harmed herself on accident, because there was a lot of blood because she turned something into blood on accident. And then Capsule and Yasna were there visiting her, and holy crap, Capsule was trying to poison Yasna, and I did not see that one coming. I kind of thought that he liked Shallan, so then I kind of felt bad. And then Yasna found out that she had the soulcaster because Yasna had to save Shallan with the soulcaster. And so I was wrong, because I thought Yasna knew that Shallan had the soulcaster. I was just kind of waiting to see what she would do. She didn't know, but she definitely was super mad. And I can see why. I'm very anxious to know what's happening with that storyline. Part of me feels like Yasna's gonna see her drawings and be like, shoot, I need to know what this is, so I'm gonna need you. Very interested in seeing what's going on there, but of course, she's not in this next part. As far as Kaladin goes, we did get confirmation that he did kill the Shard Bearer and did win the Shard Plate and Blade like I thought, and Amaran wanted it for himself, and so he branded Kaladin as a slave just so he could have it. However, I was wrong in that Kaladin didn't want the blade or the plate, but he did win it. And we did find out that he is a Windwalker. Part of me thinks that he has these powers because he won the Shard Blade and Plate, and they're actually really supposed to be his, and so with that he got the power to harness the Stormlight, but maybe it's something he has always had and just never knew. But then I feel like he would have drained the Stormlight out of stuff earlier or before that in life and would have noticed it. We haven't really gotten to see Kaladin like testing these powers or using these powers or anything yet. I got through the final set of interludes, and this set of interludes was not my most favorite. They weren't quite as fun and lighthearted as some of the other ones have been. These ones weren't as much, even though they still had more of a lighthearted tone. The one with Szeth was really interesting. I was not expecting him to be killing the king of Yakaved, so we got like a pretty big plot element in that one. I was kind of hoping that it would be like the scene where he saw Kaladin, because Kaladin was like riding a storm for one scene and like briefly flash past Szeth, and so I was really excited to like that be him seeing Kaladin, but it wasn't, or it didn't appear to be. Wit/Hoyd is maybe my favorite character so far. He's really interesting. He is briefly mentioned in one of Brandon Sanderson's other books, but like so briefly, he's almost like an end credits scene. I'm really interested to know more about him and who he is, because he was like Sigil's master, but he's also the king's wit, but then he'll disappear for months at a time, and who knows where he goes and what he's really up to, and he's definitely a bigger player in all of this, so I'm excited to see like what his role in and see him more. And the story he told was incredible. I loved that scene. And I also like that Adolin is starting to see why Dalinar is so intent on keeping the codes, and at the same time Dalinar is respecting kind of what Adolin says, and they kind of both are able to see from the other's perspective, and we can see growth in them because of the other one. Also, I think it's really interesting that Dalinar is going to be taking a bridge crew on the next run, and I'm really hoping that he takes Bridge 4 and that we get to see more interaction with Kaladin and Dalinar, because I still really think that Kaladin can like and respect Dalinar and vice versa, but he has a very strong prejudice against the Light Eyes, so I think that's going to take a while to break. But I think if there's anyone to do it, it's definitely Dalinar. I like the observations that Dalinar has been making about the Parshendi. I think that he's right in that each pair of fighters is a male and a female, maybe like a husband and wife pair, and I think they do need to learn more about the Parshendi. I also think that they kind of have like a hive mind type thing going, and that they communicate with each other through their singing, and that they can kind of communicate with each other telepathically, and I think that's how the Parshmen can maybe communicate with each other too, because I think that there's more to both of them than is touched on here. I'm excited to read more. I will let you guys know what I think of what I read tonight, and hopefully I can finish it up and provide my final thoughts. Holy crap. I just finished the chapter with Szeth, where he met his nameless master, who was Taravangian. Oh my god, this whole chapter is just so much revealed in one freaking chapter. Like, what? He was behind killing all these people, and then he's killing all the little like death sentences at the beginning of all the chapters. They're people that he's been murdering. What? So creepy. I mean, I love a good villain who thinks he is the hero, but man, and then he's gonna send him to kill Dalinar. I'm so nervous. I am like 96% of the way through this book, and this last section, I was like, end of part 4 was like, this would be like a good part to end. I don't know how we're gonna keep going. Do we just keep going? Like that chapter with Shallan and what she found out about Yasna, and I'm just like, I don't even understand what this is. Man, oh man, I will check in again, but my mind is just blown. The ending of this book is insane. Just me checking in again after like 2 pages. I did not see that coming. I knew that there was more to the Parshmen, but they're enslaved void bringers. What? Holy crap. I just finished. It was so good. Such a good beginning. I cannot wait to see where this series goes, because even at the end, it just brought up so many things. I felt like I don't know where we're gonna go from here. I don't know what we're gonna do next. And then the ending happened, and I'm like, holy man, we got enough content to bring us on for years. It kind of surprised me that Kaladin stayed a bridgeman for almost the entire book. I However, it also didn't surprise me at the same time. I have a feeling this is one of these series we're going to look back on the first book and be like, wow, look at where he was so long ago, just a little baby who didn't understand his powers at all. We barely got the tiniest glimpse of his powers by the time this book was over, so you know there's so many more places Brandon Sanderson is going to take this, especially with like that index at the end that told you about all the different essences and gems and the ways that it can be used in soul casting. Like, that glossary at the end just gives you a tiny little taste of how huge this magic system is that he's created, and how we have barely scratched the surface. We've barely scratched the surface with the lore, we've barely scratched the surface with the plot, we've barely scratched the surface with the danger. It was such a great foundation. Foundational books can sometimes tend to slip into this feeling of a giant prelude, and that we're just building for something bigger, but this had so much story and so much plot and so much character development that it was its own individual story unto itself, but laid the groundwork for so much more. And all of these characters, I love all of them, and I can't wait to go on this huge, long, giant ride with them and learn more about them. I am so nervous for what Zeth is gonna do, but at the same time I really like his character. Like, I really, really want him to be redeemed, even though he is kind of the bad guy. I don't know. I have hope for him that he's gonna turn into a good guy one day, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. Oh, that ending, that last chapter with Wit, too. I'm so curious about him. I want to know what he knows, what side he's on. I think he's a good guy. I don't know. I like him so far. But I also kind of like Sadius for a bit, and it did not end well with him. I thought Delnar's visions were really well done. I thought they provided a lot of interesting background information and have left us so many clues. I'm sure there's so many things in those visions that we haven't even touched on yet that are going to be important. And clearly the language he was speaking was important to finding the Dawn Shards, and the Almighty said at the end that without the Dawn Shards it was kind of hopeless, so maybe they can still find the Dawn Shards, which would be good. I'm really excited in future books to see Kaladin learn more about his power and work out more about his power. I also think it's really interesting that him and Seth seem to have the same power, so maybe he'll learn from Seth. Maybe he'll just teach himself, but I don't know. I have a feeling that, like, that could happen. I'm really excited for Shallan to study with Yasna and find out more about what's going on there. Also, I knew it. I knew Shallan killed her father. I feel kind of proud of myself for that one. But he was part of some evil society, so that's exciting. I'm very nervous for what's going to happen with Dalinar, with Seth. How that ended definitely left that one open for us to stew over till the next one. I'm not going to read Words of Radiance just yet. I'm going to leave that for a while. I'm going to kind of go back to my reading schedule as I had been, but we'll see if I can hold off that temptation until November, or if I'll have to read it before then, because it was a really, really good book. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I thoroughly enjoyed the characters, thoroughly enjoyed the world, and I'm blown away by Brandon Sanderson and his ability to create things that are different and create things that are unique. He just made such a fantastical world, nothing that I ever have even imagined before. From the ecosystem to the people to the religion and just everything. He always amazes me. So I finally looked up who the female narrator is that I like so much, and it's Kate Redding. So things read by Kate Redding I really enjoy, and of course I didn't look up the male narrator's voice when I did that to share with you, but he was very good as well. Some of his more emotional, manly yells were kind of interesting, and also if I never have to listen to a grown man say the word pupating ever again, it will be too soon. I couldn't. I'm sorry. And I have a degree in science, but no, thank you. And then the last thing that I will say, which I don't know if it was my ebook that I had or my audiobook that I had, but I found that there were quite a few words and lines that were just different in the two. I want to say I got my ebook like off of one of the Tor.com emails from them. Like it was like either a free ebook or it was like a cheaply discounted ebook, maybe like $2.99. So I'm not sure if it was just that or if it was like word choice that the narrator is allowed to like substitute out if it just feels more natural and doesn't change the meaning, which is what most of them were. However, there are a couple that like changed the syntax of the sentence and it meant something completely different in the 2 volumes. And it usually wasn't like a big deal. But the glossary at the end where it explained like the essences and the powers, those were like really different. So I'm not quite sure, but if you found the same thing, let me know. That is about all I have for my Way of Kings wrap up. It took me 4 days to read it. I was hoping to read it in 3, but that's okay. I'm still pretty proud of myself for reading a 1,000+ page book in 4 days. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thanks for listening to me as I ramble about my read through of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I have rated it a 5-star on Goodreads. Thanks for watching. Happy reading, and I'll talk to you again soon.